Thank you very much, Dr. Antman, for that kind introduction. Members of the faculty, distinguished guests, family members and friends of the graduates, and especially you, the graduating class of 2017. It is truly a personal pleasure and an honor to be your commencement speaker here today. As I was putting my thoughts together in preparation for addressing you, I could not help but reflect back to my own graduation from medical school when I was sitting in a very similar setting to where you are right now. And in this regard, I thought about what has since transpired in my own career and my own life, and what broader insights may have emerged from these experiences, and what applicability these insights might have to you at this very pivotal stage in your careers. Now, the first thing that comes to my mind is the extraordinary dynamic nature of our profession. Even though medicine and its related disciplines are based on fundamental principles that are unmutable, I certainly did not fully appreciate at that time how dramatically the biological sciences in general and my own chosen field of medicine would change. What I can see now, looking back over decades, is that certain things have indeed undergone extraordinary change, whereas other things have not, and in fact, should not have changed. And so, similar to my experience, you will have one foot in the medical past as you take gigantic leaps into the medical future. It is in this context that I'd like to share some brief thoughts with you as you leave here today armed with your newly developed professional skills. One thing for certain is that you will bear witness to a constant and at times seemingly overwhelming evolution of scientific and technological advances. You will feel, believe it or not, as I still do up to this day, both exhilarated and a little bit intimidated. For the physicians in the group, you will be learning the art of practicing medicine at the same time that you are trying to keep up with the science that will be advancing at a breathtaking pace. For the PhDs in the group, the experience will be quite similar. The evolution of medicine and the biological sciences will be beyond your control, but you will be part of it, hanging on seemingly for dear life to keep up with it. Rest assured that being bored will not be a problem for you. Let me give you an example of the kinds of dramatic evolutions and changes that can occur totally beyond one's control and that can profoundly impact your career. It is a story I often tell since it is so demonstrable of the point that I will make. In 1968, I finished my residency in internal medicine at the New York Hospital Cornell Medical Center. That very same year, noted public health scholars were opining and even testifying before the United States Congress that since the advent of antibiotics, vaccines, and public health measures over the previous decades, and I give you a quote, the war against infectious diseases had essentially been won, and we should focus our efforts on other areas of research and public health. Now, as fate would have it, at that time, I was on my way to begin, of all things, an infectious diseases fellowship at NIH. I remember reflecting as I drove from New York City through the Lincoln Tunnel down Route 95 to Bethesda, Maryland, as the words of these seemingly wise pundits resonated in my mind, I felt somewhat anxious and even ambivalent about my career choice, to say the least. Was I entering into a disappearing subspecialty? Well, apparently not. For within a few years, the first cases of what would be known as AIDS were reported in California and New York City, and with that, my professional career and in fact, my entire life was transformed. However, it did not stop with HIV/AIDS, for my field of infectious disease had witnessed the continual threat of emerging and re-emerging pathogens such as SARS, West Nile virus, extensively drug-resistant tuberculosis, hospital outbreaks of drug-resistant gram-negative organisms, dengue in Puerto Rico and southern Florida, chikungunya in the Caribbean, the 2009 H1N1 pandemic, and MERS coronavirus in the Middle East. Now, if that were not enough, then came the devastating Ebola outbreak that infected 28,000 people and killed 11,000 in West Africa, while frightening about 300 million people in the United States and consuming much of my time and energy in 2014 and 2015. And just this past year, and even spilling over into this year, we've had the terrible onslaught of Zika virus in South America and the Caribbean, spilling over into southern Florida. A relatively mild disease, yet with potentially devastating consequences in pregnant women. The first ever mosquito-borne virus that results in congenital abnormalities in infected pregnant women, and one that is also sexually transmitted. You could not have made this stuff up, even for a science fiction movie. Finally, we have yellow fever outbreaks threatening the highly populated areas of Brazil. All of these issues were completely off my radar screen at the time that I was sitting where you are, graduating from medical school. But unfortunately, they are now part of all of our daily lives and occupy much of my professional life. Now, obviously, to be realistic, not every change, evolution, or advance in medicine or the biomedical sciences will be as dramatic or as draconian as a frightening infectious diseases outbreak. However, please believe me that the same unpredictable elements in the evolution of public health, medicine, and biomedical science are going to confront each and every one of you, regardless of what specialty or subspecialty of medicine you pursue, or what particular area of biomedical science you enter. The exciting part of all of this, which still grips me after all these years, is that you will be part of that evolution, and continual learning is integral to what we do. There is nothing static about the discipline of which all of us are a part. And what does all of this have to do with what is happening here today at your commencement? It relates to the issue of what I call the paradox of graduation when you are dealing with medicine and science. It is understandable that on this day, you feel that you no longer are really a student. Well, let me tell you that this is just an illusion. In my own career, it became painfully apparent very shortly after graduation from medical school that my student days had actually just begun. For in the field of medicine and the biological sciences, we are all perpetual students. We may graduate from whatever institution of learning that we attended, but that is not the end game. The scope of what we have learned and what we still need to learn is like a giant mosaic, and this mosaic of our knowledge and experiences is eternally unfinished, as well it should be. Now, there's good news and bad news about this. The good news is that it will, as I just mentioned, be very difficult to get bored, and the level of self-fulfillment will be very high. The bad news, or maybe I should say sobering news, is that you will likely develop a sense of low-grade anxiety and a nagging feeling of inadequacy, as if we all do not have enough of that anyway as we prepare to enter our house staff or other postdoctoral or advanced degree training. That certainly was the case with me. That somewhat paradoxical mix of confidence and insecurity. This feeling, however, is not all necessarily bad, since it can be transformed into something quite productive and positive. Because when you realize and finally admit to yourself that you will never know as much as you want to or need to know, this is a consistent feeling that I still have, and that you are participating in a dynamic process with a steep learning curve, you have to strike a delicate balance. On the one hand, you can't be immobilized by this potentially disturbing concept, and you should certainly experience fully the joys of life. In other words, don't forget to have some fun. On the other hand, it should create a healthy, positive, and productive tension whereby you never feel completely comfortable. It is this tension that can actually serve as a catalyst to consistently improve yourself and fulfill what we know is your enormous potential. To this very day, I still feel such a productive tension, whether it's in my lab, running a large biomedical institute, or seeing my patients. It has become a part of me, and I truly believe that it has helped me greatly rather than hurt me in any way. Now, given what is happening in our world today and in the context of your chosen profession, I want to turn for just a moment to the issue of global leadership in medicine. For the physicians in the group, most of you will be concerned with matters that seemingly apply only to this country. However, be assured that in the broad sense, what you all will be doing is linked directly and indirectly to the health of all the citizens of the world. It is so apparent now, as we come to the end of the second decade of the 21st century, that we live in a global community, and linkages exist between what happens here in the United States and throughout the world, be it with regard to the environment, security, finance, and indeed health. In this context, the United States is clearly the world's leader in the field of medicine and the biomedical sciences. As such, your generation as a whole, and even some of you as individuals, will be setting the example, and the world will be looking to you for leadership, be it in clinical medicine, teaching, research, administration, or public health. Your generation of physicians and biomedical scientists will serve as the gold standard for the rest of the world. We cannot relinquish this leadership role. Health and biomedical research is by definition global. We are not alone. I appreciate that it is difficult for you to think of yourselves in this context at this early stage in your career. However, it's unquestionably the case. You have been trained at a very fine institution, and as such, those of you who choose such a path, you will be ready to assume this type of leadership. And remember, don't for a moment believe that you are too young or too inexperienced to begin to assume leadership roles. You do not need to wait. You are ready to lead, and society is ready for you and actually needs you very much. Remember, leadership is a gradual process that you have already begun when you enrolled here in Boston University School of Medicine, an institution for leaders in medicine and biomedical research. And let me point out that I speak not necessarily of officially designated leadership positions, because leadership takes many forms, including the quiet leadership of example. Finally, we have been considering over the past few minutes the changes that we can expect in our profession over the coming years. But what about those aspects of medicine that hopefully will never change? In what way do we actually want to be stuck in the past? I refer to the fundamental principles that have guided past generations of physicians, principles that are sometimes forgotten and neglected in the current technological world of modern medicine, and unfortunately may be difficult to execute properly in the restrictions of a managed care setting. These are principles that are the foundation of the joy and the beauty of our chosen profession. Integrity, unselfishness, perseverance, inquisitiveness, and a compelling thirst for knowledge with the patient as the focus and the beneficiary of all that you do professionally. If you are a physician or other healthcare provider, you must have nothing less than complete commitment towards your patient and establish a relationship based on sensitivity, comfort, compassion, reassurance, and respect. In my role as an editor of Harrison's Principles of Internal Medicine for the past 34 years, I have included in the first chapter, which is entitled The Practice of Medicine, a quote from the legendary American physician, Francis W. Peabody, who lived from 1881 to 1927 right here in Boston, and who was actually born just blocks from where we are right now. He said it so well, and I quote, "One of the essential qualities of the clinician is interest in humanity, for the secret of the care of the patient is in caring for the patient." Likewise, if you are a basic scientist, your integrity, your scholarship, and your commitment should match the importance of your task, which is the advancement of knowledge for the good of mankind. And so, my colleagues, you will leave here today as professionals in a most noble field. You and I have been privileged, and with this privilege comes responsibilities. May you carry these responsibilities with pride and conviction, and I strongly hope that you will experience the great joy and satisfaction in our shared profession. Congratulations to you, to your families, and your loved ones. Good luck, and God bless you.